agree to write a list of principles for keeping people free. The USA was just starting out a whole brand new country, and so our people spelled it out, the things that we should be. And they put those principles down on paper and called it the Constitution. And it's been helping us run our country ever since then. The first part of the Constitution is called the Preamble and tells what those founding fathers set out to do. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. In 1787, I'm told, our founding fathers all sat down and wrote a list of principles that's known the world around. The USA was just starting out a whole brand new country, and so our people spelled it out. They wanted a land of liberty, and the preamble goes like this. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America, for the United States of America.
Now you guys all know the preamble by heart, right? Everybody knows the preamble by heart now? Perfect. Just a reminder, if you're sitting in the first 3 rows here, and if you're sitting on this section, you do need to wear a mask for the safety and comfort of those in those sections. It's been requested for a couple of reasons. Some people are immunocompromised. Some people just feel like this would be a safer way. There are some spare masks up here if you want to sit there and do not have a mask. All right. So, if you look at our modules, because I heard there were many questions. First of all, the way you get to Cengage is you start here, right? And you register. Out of this class, 242 out of 250 have registered for the class, so good job. All you have to do is click on it. It's going to take you here. It's going to load in a new window. And for you, if you haven't registered yet, you need to register. Okay? All right? Most of you have, like I said, 242. All right, so good work. And one thing that's really important about this is right now it says the class average is 98.22%. You guys have something due at noon today, right? Chapters 1 and 2. Okay? They're pretty quick. Remember, if you're pressed for time, do the quiz. It's 25 points versus the little quizzes add up to 10. Okay? So if you're pressed for time, do that. But you guys are doing well. I'm proud of you. All right. So if you have done that, then you can also use your phone to load the Cengage app. So we're going to do that together right now. The Cengage app looks like this little blue, whenever you go to your app store, it's blue with a little white, like, stylized flower. It's Cengage. Blue with a little white stylized flower. Okay? If you're already registered for the class, you can just download the app and then register through the app and you're set. Okay? So it's pretty easy to do. Now, we did a poll. In the last class using the Cengage app. That's one of the ways that we'll use it. And I'm going to give you those results in just a second, okay? But we'll also use it to take attendance. I take attendance, probably 3 or 4 slides in, give stragglers time to get here, right? And then I'm going to do a poll at the end of class, or toward the end of class. Usually I have a slide or 2 after the poll as well, okay? So download the app, and that's how we'll take attendance in here. Remember, attendance in here is to help you do what? Round up your grade, right? That's the whole point, right? If you have an 89.1 and you have been here 70% of the time, you get an A, or a 69.1, you get a C, right? If you've been here 70% of the time, okay? However, if you have a 69.9 or a 59.9 and you haven't been in class, you have an F or a D. You hear what I'm saying? I don't round up unless you've been in class. Okay, so the attendance is the way that we do that, so do download the app on your phone. And it'll show up under courses, right, on the side, courses. And you can just click on this one. You may have other classes that use it as well. But when you do that, you can do this. So let's look. That's the first thing that I want you guys to remember. All under modules, right? The very first one, start here. Then week 1, which we've already done, right? And under week 1, I have the PowerPoint slides and also the questions that kind of help you focus during lecture. Those are the questions from which I will draw test questions. Some multiple choice, some essay, but that's what they'll be drawn from, okay? So that way you have a study guide from the beginning. So week 2, these are the readings for week 2. I also have the workbook chapters 2 and 3 because those are due this week, okay? So if you don't have your workbook yet, remember I have chapter 2 and 3 up here. If you need to read the Condensed Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, go right ahead. But I also have the lecture and the questions, right? So they're both here, and so that you can see them. Now, in addition to that, there is a link. So if you go to your home page, there's a link right here. Joy has given us some extra resources, reminder that you go to your labs on Fridays. And then there's a link to a YouTube playlist that is a repository of all class recordings. This is a webcam right here. It's going to record me talking, right? Terribly exciting stuff, especially the first part you can probably skip, okay? You can fast forward. But that's that, okay? Remember, you have Cengage. Your first Cengage assignments are due today by noon. That gives you 1 hour and 18 minutes when you're not listening to me. So, let's talk about the Constitution. I'll take attendance in just a second. I have it built in. First of all, 21 of you answered, and if you'll notice, I put N equals 21, right? Is 21 a good representative sample of 250 students in this class? No, it's not. So this poll, we can say, this is clearly, maybe, it gets pretty close, but it's probably not a great sample of how we feel in this class. But we did it for fun, and we can kind of get an idea. 48% of you, freedom of belief, speech, press, association, access to government are most important to you in terms of a democratic republic. 10%, the rule of law, that no one is above the law. And then 24%, about a quarter of you, equality of persons in law and in fact. And then about 20% of you, 19%, well-educated and participatory electorate. So I put the date of the poll, I put how many people answered the poll. In a little bit, we're going to do a poll because you guys have downloaded that app in the meantime, and there'll be more of you that can participate, okay? And so that N's going to be bigger when we look at our poll for today. But let's talk a little bit about the Constitution. You guys read Federalist 10 and 51. You found it to be enthralling, correct? All right. What are some key takeaways from Federalist 10 and 51? Yes?
Madison believes that factions are inevitable.
that factions are inevitable because of
Different human beings are potentially have different opinions on everything.
because we're human. And if we are given our liberty to be human, then factions are inevitable. We're going to break apart and have different ideas because we have different experiences, because we have been educated differently. All of those things. Okay? So Madison is going to say, hey, look, factions are inevitable. And to get rid of the cause of faction, which is liberty, is to destroy this ideal before it even begins. It's kind of like, hey, look, there's going to be fire because there's oxygen, right? He says, so we could get rid of all the oxygen and then there wouldn't be any fires. Do you guys have a problem with that? Yeah, you can believe it. He says it's the same thing, right? Liberty is what allows us to breathe as humans, right? What allows a democratic republic to work. So, he also talks a little bit about self-interest, right? He talks a little bit about self-interest. And I want you guys to understand self-interest. I get very upset with my 6-year-old a lot, which is useless. It's something you should do. There's no point, right? And so, but I get upset with her because she's selfish. And I tell her, you are selfish, you have to think of other people. But selfish is not self-interest. It's not the same thing exactly, okay? What's something that's in your self-interest that isn't necessarily selfish? Yeah.
The ability to eat.
The ability to what?
To eat.
To eat. Sure, right? You know, having food, right? It's not necessarily selfish that you nourish yourself, but it's in your self-interest, right? What else? The maintenance of public goods. Very good, okay? It's in your self-interest that there are roads. But in terms of selfishness, right? That means you have to pay taxes. That means sometimes you have to pay tolls. Right? And that doesn't feel good. That's more of a selfish sort of, no, I want to keep that money. But it's in my self-interest that there are roads. For a number of reasons. One, so that I can drive on them, but what else? Everybody else can drive on, and importantly, commerce can happen. Right? Calvin Coolidge in the late 1800s said the business of America is business. Right? Somebody said that seems a little mercenary to me. Maybe it is. But also understand that these founders, right, also saw that the big, and, common sense, like I said, saw that the big, amazing thing that America was doing, the thing that they were best at was trade, right? Commerce. And so that's a part of this conversation. The economy is part of this conversation. And so it's in our self-interest. It's our self-interest that, school buses can go on the road. Oh, there's something maybe in our self-interest, right? University of Oklahoma. This may be a selfish interest for you because you're benefiting directly from it, but it's also in your self-interest, right? That universities exist. That there is the infrastructure to pay for it. But you have to be careful. Because a lot of times with self-interest, it becomes very focused, right? So, I'm hungry. My self-interest is to never go hungry. God is my witness, I'll never go hungry. Scarlet O'Hara. It's in my self-interest to never go hungry again, so what might I do? Steal? Okay, what else might I do?
Open a bakery.
Open a bakery, never go hungry, right? Okay, yeah.
Set up a reliable facility.
set up a reliable food source.
Get a job.
At the beginning of the pandemic, what did people do? They did what? They hoarded, right? They bought up everything because they wanted to make sure we were okay, right? And so one of those things, that self-interest can maybe go too far. And it keeps other people from also, and so that has to be checked. And so Walmart started saying limit two, right? The toilet paper packages in particular. We were very concerned about that, right? You know, there's always a shower. The point is, my husband had a bidet installed, so, you know, totally fine, right? Yeah. So, but when we talk about self-interest, it can go too far. I mean, there's one thing, making sure you have enough for winter. That's reasonable, right? But at the point where you're hoarding things so that other people don't get access even to them, right? That's what he's talking about. He says, hey, look, we need for your self-interest to check my self-interest, and your self-interest to check his self-interest. And so one of the things that we have to do is we have to make sure that there are checks on that self-interest. Because ultimately, Madison believes that ambition is good. Right? What is ambition? What's your ambition? What's your ambition? What? Do well in school. Okay? It's a good ambition. What else we got? Ambition? I want to be a lawyer. Ambition. A nurse? Ambition. Film industry? Ambition. To graduate? Ambition? Graduate? Alright. Over here, some ambitions.
Make robot arms.
What?
Make robot arms.
Make robot arms? Fair enough. Ambition. Ambition. Make money. Capitalism. Ambition. Ambition. Work for the State Department. Ambition, guys. Lift heavy weights. Alright. Get a degree. Ambition. Ambition. Just want to touch. That's, okay. So a lot of these ambitions, right, are going to help you because you have a goal, get to where you need to be. But at the point where our ambition starts doing what? Hurting others, then there needs to be someone else checking that ambition. Right? Now, is it going to hurt anybody else if you graduate and pass this class?
I hope not.
I don't think so, right? This is a good ambition. Okay? Lift heavy weights is going to hurt somebody else? Possibly in the future, due to the fact that you choose supervillain as opposed to superhero. So, choose superhero. Okay? So, when we talk about that, right, when we talk about our ambition, a lot of times it's hard for us to understand that, but it's easier to understand when we start talking about it in a political realm. If Oklahoma gets $1 trillion to fix its roads, that's good for Oklahoma. Especially our bridges, which basically were last really fixed during the Depression, during the Works Project Administration. Right? I think there was a survey done about 15 years ago that said 82% of our bridges were in bad shape. That's insane. 82%? I drive on them all the time, right? And so $1 trillion to Oklahoma is amazing. They could use that on those bridges. It might solve that bridge problem. But at what cost? What's the cost? What?
Horrible traffic.
Okay, horrible traffic, they have to repair it, okay? What? Some taxes, but let's say it's out there, it's in the budget. it limits our ability to get money for other things, such as social programs, right? So if you give $1 trillion to the road system in Oklahoma, that means that there's not $1 billion for education, or for unemployment insurance, or for healthcare, right? And so these ambitions, when we say, hey, we want good roads, I think we're agreed. We like some good roads. But maybe there's some other stuff we like too. And then that's just Oklahoma. Now, let's say Oklahoma competed against Texas and Arkansas and Louisiana, which is going to need some more roads here in just a second. Right? Competing against Connecticut and Montana and California. Don't they deserve roads too?
Not Texas.
Texas does not deserve roads, you're right. Okay, but the point is this ambition, right, has to check. And so the politicians, the elected officials who are trying to negotiate to get Oklahoma the goods that it needs are competing against people trying to get goods for their state. There has to be a check on that ambition. Madison also points out that the cause of conflict, one of the reasons we have factions, kind of the root of it, is the distribution of wealth. Right? Now understand that Madison firmly believed that everything he had, he deserved. Because why? What? He worked for it? He didn't squander it? Right? That's actually probably more true. But Madison was a hard worker, there's no question. Also a genius, right? But he strongly believed that those with talent, okay, whatever that talent is, but those with talent, and part of that includes hard work. He considers that to be something that is your asset, okay? Your ability to work hard. Whatever it is your talent is, my talent is I can read a book in a day, easily, right? That's my talent. And I enjoy it even better, right? So that's my talent. Now, should I get paid for that? Unclear. But there are some talents that you get paid really well for. Like what? Building robot arms. Okay? What else? Yeah. Sports, absolutely. Art? Huh? Taking pictures? What?
Arguing in court.
Arguing in court? Sometimes. We'll talk about that. Yeah. Music? Performing, generally, right? Yeah. Entertainment?
Abusing capitalism.
Abusing capitalism? Yes. If you're very talented at abusing capitalism, you can make a tremendous amount of money, right? If that's your talent. Okay? And so Madison is saying, hey, look, I think some unequal distribution of wealth is good. I deserve more because I work harder, because I'm smarter, because I'm really talented at this, and because I deserve more. And those who work less or don't use their talents, they deserve less, Madison would argue. But he also argues that the root of political conflict comes from those who have and those who have not. Marx, 100 years later, says the same thing. And Marx says the solution is what? What does Marx say the solution is? You know Karl Marx? Yeah. Equal distribution solves the problem. Okay? Madison says, no, it doesn't. Madison said that's a bad idea. 100 years later, 100 years before, he would never say that because he says, because look, people are ambitious and self-interested. But you have to check it. Okay? Allow people to do their best. That's what makes us good. Right? That's what advances humanity, is that people are ambitious and they seek out to do their best. But it has to be checked. So that abuse of capitalism is something we have to check. Because it hurts other people. Okay? He says the job of government is to protect the minority and the minority's property from the tyranny of the majority. In other words, to protect those who have and their property from the masses taking over. What do you guys think about that? How many of you want the government to do something if your laptop is stolen? And you would like the government to do something about it, right? Yes? Anybody else? If everything you own is stolen out of your dorm room, do you want the University of Oklahoma to try to find the person who did that? Yeah. You want the government to protect your property. You want better locks on your doors. And maybe not to leave your door open next time, okay, we'll do that. But at the same time, you want cameras. Right? We want that. But again, this is weighed against that what? That also self-interest of the people. One of the reasons why we have good infrastructure in schools is so that everyone has that. Right? He believes that balanced government will keep government from being seized by one faction. A government that pays attention to the masses, but also pays attention to and protects the minority. So in Federalist 10 and 51, sorry. One of the things that he points out about the Constitution is that the way that it is structured, it limits and checks government. It restrains intemperate action. It requires deliberation. It has to pass two separate houses of Congress that are elected from all over the place. So one house is elected by the population. And one house is elected by states. So they have different interests. Senators have different interests than House members. And then the president has to sign it. Who, at this time, would have been elected by electors in each state. Right? Which is still sort of true. We'll talk about that later. It divides and blends powers. It divides the power. So the power does not rest all in one person. President Biden cannot snap his fingers and push through an infrastructure plan. He can't do it. Right? He would really like to. But it requires that Congress is on board. It's definitely more pessimistic on human nature than is the Declaration of Independence, right? That self-interest stuff instead of, all for one, we shall overcome, we're all created equal. Madison's like, yeah, some are try harder. Right? Much more Abigail than John Adams. Protective of property rights. In the Constitution itself, there are protections for property rights as a part of the body of the Constitution. And in 10 and 51, he talks about factions, but he also talks about demagogues, right? He says we have to be careful. Because if men were angels, there would be no need for government. What's he saying there? What's he saying, guys? If men were angels, there'd be no need for government. Yeah.
God's always going to try to put the rules. Like for me, like my political utopia is anarcho capitalism is one that I think never going to work. But someone's always going to try to take advantage of it.
Okay. So he says, look, someone's always going to try to put the rules. The thing is whenever you guys form a constitution this Friday, you're going to be thinking about the fact that there's self-interest, right? And you have to watch out for that. You have to balance it. Because we're concerned about the fact that from the people, and he's really concerned, Madison, again, I want to be clear, Aristotle, Martin Luther, James Madison, are all very fearful of the masses, of unwise majorities, people who are not educated, people who don't understand the way that politics works. He's worried that from them, people like Patrick Henry, a demagogue, who plays on the fear of people to gain power, will take over. And as a result of them taking over, there'll be a tyranny. People's liberties will be limited. He's fearful of this, right? Demagogues use fear in order to get people to be on their side. So the Constitution creates checks and balances. And understand, Montesquieu comes up with this idea of separation of powers, right? But Madison's genius is that he takes this and he says, yeah, but that's not enough. Just separating isn't enough. You have to also overlap those powers so that there are checks on all the powers that they have. He says government's going to be limited by our ambition, by the ambition of people who are in office, right? I'm a senator. I want to make sure that I hold on to the power that I have, and so I'm going to work very hard against this senator over here. Now, ultimately, Madison would like for there to be, some compromise, some discourse, coming to a solution. But he says no law at all is better than a bad law. And so he's okay with things taking a long time. The majority rule, certainly they wanted that, but they wanted it limited by states. Let's take attendance. Eric, can you take attendance? See the checks? Let's check attendance. So if you guys will open up your app.
It's open.
Attendance is open. Go to across the top, there's a tab that says attendance. Click on that tab. Click on that tab. You'll be able to do that. The Federalists are going to support the Constitution. There are 85 Federalist papers. You guys have a link to that. You guys finding that attendance tab?
81 have.
81 of you have. Good job. Okay, once you get in, go to your courses. Then once you click on this course, then go to the attendance tab across the top. Click attendance. You have a little bit more time, probably about another minute, Eric?
I gave you 3 today, so.
Oh, so you still have 2 minutes left, okay? If for some reason it's freezing, go out of the app and log back in, you have time. Okay? You still have 2 minutes left. What?
Make sure your location is on.
Make sure your location's on. All right, so the Federalist Papers, written by James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay. Hamilton writes the most. Madison writes the most important ones. Jay gets sick and only writes like 2. Okay? Hamilton is very strong on the president. We're going to read a lot about Hamilton. First of all, Hamilton belonged to the Church of George Washington, okay? And he thought George Washington could do no wrong, therefore a president could do no wrong. Madison thought everyone is flawed. Even though George is my BFF, he's not always going to be president. Hamilton was really upset whenever George Washington said, hey, 2 terms is enough, I'm not a king. Because George Washington believed in democracy. For the most part, the Federalists tended to be large landowners, wealthy merchants, professionals, educated people. They preferred weaker state governments because they didn't like the way that states had become little fiefdoms, little tyrannies. They wanted a strong national government, though, again, this is relative, right? They wanted the state governments to be a little weaker, the national government to be stronger, okay? It's relative. They wanted indirect elections. We vote for someone, that person then votes for someone, okay? So, for example, the way that we elected senators, we voted for state legislatures, they then selected our senators, okay? They wanted longer terms of office, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years. They wanted government by the elite. They were very Aristotelian in this way, right? They believed you needed an education to govern. They wanted those who were educated to make decisions. They really expected very few violations of individual liberties. They thought state governments would handle that. So even whenever I said, hey, look, they wanted a stronger national government, understand they did not envision the police powers of the federal government today. Okay? They expected that to be at the state level. But also understand, it's 1787. There aren't even cars yet. Right? Horses have been the main mode of transportation for 2,000 years. Right? When we talk about rapid technological growth in the 1800s and 1900s, which we will, that is a massive difference. It makes a massive difference on the way that government works here. The Anti-Federalists are going to oppose the Constitution. They question the motives of the framers. They believed that the Constitution was an enemy of freedom. Patrick Henry famously smelled a rat. Give me liberty, give me death, and you also smell the rat. Okay. Just 2 big quotes. They feared erosion of fundamental liberties because they read the Constitution and they saw that provision where it said the supreme law of the land is the Constitution. And then the laws that are made under the Constitution. And then treaties that are lawfully made under the Constitution. And it doesn't say anything about the states. There were small farmers, shopkeepers, laborers. These are the people who were, engaged in the rebellion that led to this. Shays Rebellion, the Whiskey Rebellion, previously, right? But understand that the reason behind the Constitution is so that there are not Shays Rebellions. So that the economy is run in one centralized place. So the monetary issues are handled in one place. And to protect against the British coming back and saying, oh yeah, we would like you back now. Right? We're done with France for a bit, we'll be back. Shopkeepers, laborers, they prefer weaker national governments, strong state governments, Direct elections for everything. We vote for our representatives, we vote for our senator, we vote for the president, we vote for judges, we vote for the dog catcher, etc. Okay? Shorter terms, only 1 year. They wanted rule by the common man. And they wanted strengthened protections for individual liberties. And this last one is the one that we get some concession on. Patrick Henry argues against ratification. He says, here's the problem. It says, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union. It doesn't even talk about the states. It's not a compact of states, it's a compact of the people, and they're going to supersede state power. He says, we have become great not because government is strong and energetic, but because liberty is its direct end and foundation. If we have one consolidated empire of America, government isn't strong enough to keep it together. It'll fall apart. There won't be any real checks or balances. Federalist 1 responds to this. The obstacles to ratification of this document include the interests of men who benefit from the subdivision, Patrick Henry, into several partial confederacies than from its union under one government. They're saying, hey, look, Patrick Henry, you're a big fish in a small pond and you want to keep it that way, but that means you're running it. And that's a problem. There needs to be ambition. It's equally absurd to aim at making proselytes by fire and sword. Don't use fear, use logic. And of those men who have overturned the liberties of republics, the greatest number have begun their career by paying an obsequious court. What does that mean? Obsequious court? Like me. Like me. Don't you like me? You're really pretty and fast, strong, right? To the people, commencing as demagogues and ending tyrants. But as far as these individual rights, there are some that are protected in the Constitution: writ of habeas corpus, prohibited passing bills of attainder or ex post facto laws. No religious qualifications can be placed on office holders in the Constitution itself. Treason is narrowly defined. There are strict rules of evidence and a right to trial by a jury in criminal cases. So when they say, hey, look, we don't need to protect these individual rights, Anti-Federalists say, yeah, but you're doing it with some of them. So my question for you is, what side are you on? So we'll see how we're doing here.